Imagine losing track of 23,500 people.
Yeah, it's hard to even picture that.
Right. Not just misplacing a file on a desk or, forgetting to update a spreadsheet. I mean, completely losing 23,500 actual physical human beings inside your own country.
It sounds impossible.
You have absolutely no idea where they are, what they are doing, or, well, if they even went home. You would think that's the premise of some kind of thriller movie.
Yeah, you really would.
But no, that is the actual reality of the Canadian immigration system we are looking at today.
It is a staggering reality.
Yeah.
And honestly, that number is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the recent systemic breakdowns.
Oh, for sure. We are going to get into exactly how a modern government loses track of a small city's worth of people in just a minute. But first, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone.
Today is Sunday, April 12, 2026, and I just want to say a massive thank you to you for spending part of your weekend with us.
Absolutely. We really appreciate it.
Whether you are prepping for a meeting, commuting, or just trying to stay informed, having you here means the world to us. And hey, if you've been getting value from our previous discussions, please take a second right now to subscribe, like, and share this podcast.
It really does help us bring these deep dives to more people.
It truly does. And jump into the comments, too. Let us know exactly what area of immigration you want us to tackle next. Your curiosity genuinely drives our schedule.
Totally. And if you have a business or a product that you want to share with an incredibly engaged, curious listener like the one tuning in right now, we do have sponsorship spots open.
We do.
You can reach out directly by sending a detailed message to deepdive247@gmail.com. We would really love to collaborate.
Definitely hit us up.
Also, right off the top, we need to be very clear about our credentials before we dive in. I want to state explicitly that neither of us are IRCC certified consultants or immigration lawyers.
Definitely not. No legal advice here.
We are here strictly to provide a deep, friendly, and captivating analysis of the facts. The goal is just to help you easily understand the complex machinery working behind the daily headlines.
And you really need to understand that machinery right now. I mean, there is just so much noise flying around the internet regarding immigration.
It's a mess out there.
It is. And we are seeing deeply concerning reports of fake travel agents deliberately misinterpreting the rules to you, their clients. So today, we are cutting through the absolute chaos.
Which is much needed.
The topic today is exactly what you need to know. We are talking about new measures for international students in Canada.
Which is incredibly timely, because the entire foundation of today's deep dive stems from a bombshell Auditor General's report.
Oh yeah, that report was wild.
It really was. This report exposed massive, undeniable holes in the international student program. The findings were so stark and frankly so embarrassing for the departments involved that it actually forced Immigration Minister Lena Mettledge-Diab to take immediate action.
Right, she had to accept those 6 incredibly strict new recommendations to overhaul the system.
Exactly. Before we even talk about the new rules meant to fix the system, though, we have to talk about the leaky bucket that forced the government's hand in the first place.
We have to, because I was looking through your notes on the scale of the backlog, and I honestly thought there was a typo.
I wish there was a typo. Sadly, no typo. To grasp the gravity of the new measures, you really have to understand the sheer scale of the old system's failure.
Okay, lay it on us.
Well, just look at the overwhelming backlog facing Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC.
Right.
Between 2023 and 2024, IRCC's internal systems flagged roughly 153,000 students as potentially non-compliant.
Wow.
That means the system suspected they weren't actually going to class or they were somehow violating their visa conditions.
153,000 red flags? That's a staggering number.
Exactly. But here is the mechanism of the failure. IRCC only had the physical human resources to manually investigate about 2,000 of those cases per year.
Wait. 2,000?
2,000.
So, if I'm doing the math right, they flagged over 150,000 people, but only looked into 2,000.
Correct.
That means 98% of the people flagged for potentially breaking the rules were completely ignored.
Completely ignored.
They were just sitting in a digital filing cabinet somewhere, gathering virtual dust.
98% completely uninvestigated. And, when you have that profound a resource shortage, it creates a cascade effect right down to how expired permits are handled.
Okay, right. Which brings us to the missing people.
Yes. The audit dug into the data for 2024. In that year alone, 549,000 study permits expired.
Which, I mean, that sounds like a massive number of people who need to leave, but obviously not all of them do, right?
Right.
A lot
Exactly.
of students transition to work permits or other statuses.
Exactly. The vast majority, about 93%, did everything right. They transitioned to other legal statuses to stay in Canada,
Okay, that's good.
but that still left roughly 39,500 people whose permits expired and who had absolutely no valid legal status to remain in the country.
And this brings us back to the hook. The 39,500 who were supposed to pack up and go home.
Right. So when the auditors checked the exit records with border security, they could only confirm that 16,000 of those individuals actually departed Canada,
Oh, wow.
which leaves 23,500 individuals completely unaccounted for.
Okay, let's unpack this,
Yeah.
because it's not just that they slipped away into the night. It's a mechanical failure of how the government tracks human movement.
It really is.
It's like, imagine you are running a massive exclusive arena event.
Yeah.
You have security guards meticulously scanning every single person's ticket at the front door as they walk in.
Okay. Yeah.
But the software for the front door scanners isn't wired to the back exits. In fact, you've left the back exits completely unmonitored.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. 39,000 people didn't buy a ticket for the after party. But you have zero idea who actually walked out the door and who was just hiding out in the arena bleachers.
That is a brilliant way to visualize the disconnect. The tracking mechanism was entirely siloed at the point of entry. It was basically a one-way mirror.
So how are they fixing that?
Well, the very first new measure directly addresses this broken doorway. It's called expired permit tracking.
Okay.
IRCC is no longer going to just hope someone left. Annually, they will now actively compile and provide the Canada Border Services Agency, the CBSA, with specific targeted lists of students whose study permits have expired.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. The CBSA will then aggressively cross-reference this with their own entry and exit databases to verify departures.
So the front door and the back door are finally going to talk to each other.
Exactly. But it's one thing to lose track of people whose permits naturally expired and who just quietly overstayed.
Right. That's bad enough.
The audit uncovered something much, much worse. It found out what happens when the government actually catches someone actively committing fraud and then does absolutely nothing about it.
Ugh, yes. This was the part of your research that genuinely made my jaw drop.
Shocking.
We aren't talking about suspected fraud or a typo on an application. We are talking about confirmed cases here.
Yes. The auditors isolated 800 specific cases between 2018 and 2023 where IRCC had confirmed misrepresentation.
Meaning they knew for a fact it was fake.
Exactly. This means the applicant used forged financial documents, fake acceptance letters, or explicitly lied. ICC knew it was fraud.
Right.
And yet for years, they took zero enforcement action on these 800 files.
So the government catches you lying to get into the country, and their response is to just look the other way. What did these 800 people actually do with that free pass?
Well, because there was no enforcement. 92% of those 800 individuals went on to boldly apply for other immigration status within Canada.
You are kidding?
No.
Yeah.
Let's look at the actual outcomes.
Right.
501 of them applied to extend their permits or get new visas. And incredibly, 351 of those were approved.
Wait. I have to stop you there because I want to make sure you, the person listening right now, are hearing the sheer absurdity of this.
It is absurd.
A person uses fake documents to get into Canada. The government catches them and flags the file.
Right.
Then that same person applies to extend their stay, and the government says, sure, here's your approval. How is that mechanically possible? How does the left hand not know what the right hand is doing?
It comes back to how bureaucratic software systems and departmental silos function.
Seriously?
Yeah, the IRCC officer processing the extension in one department literally did not see or was not required to check the fraud alert generated by the entry department or the CBSA.
That is just broken.
The databases weren't forcing a hard stop. And it gets worse.
Oh, no.
124 of those confirmed fraud cases applied for permanent residency. 105 were approved for PR.
No way.
And another 110 sought asylum, tying up the refugee system.
That is beyond a loophole. That is a system that actively rewards the absolute worst behavior, while, genuine, honest international students are sitting in the queue doing everything right.
Which is exactly why IRCC is implementing two vital new measures to react to this massive embarrassment.
Thank goodness. What are they?
First is mandatory fraud follow-up. IRCC officers are now mechanically blocked from making a final decision on an application if a fraud flag has been raised.
Okay.
The system requires a full investigation to be completed before an approval or denial can be issued.
A hard stop in the software. Finally.
Yes. And the second measure fixes that exact left-hand, right-hand problem you mentioned. It's called post-approval alerts.
How does that work?
If IRCC discovers fraud after a person is already in the country, they now place a permanent, inescapable info alert on the person's file.
Good.
Crucially, they now coordinate this instantly with the CBSA. So if that person tries to apply for a work permit or permanent residency 3 years later, that alert immediately freezes the application and triggers an enfacement review.
Okay, so clearly fraud was rampant. But where was it originating? Because the data shows a very specific, undeniable pattern.
It doesn't.
It revolved around a fast-tracked program that essentially became a superhighway for bad actors, and it completely altered the demographics of Canadian campuses in the process.
You're referring to the Student Direct Stream or the SDS program.
Right, the SDS.
Yeah.
How did this program actually work, and why was it so vulnerable?
The SDS was designed to expedite visa processing for applicants from 14 specific countries. The mechanism was supposed to be simple.
Oh.
If you could provide a guaranteed investment certificate up front, proving you had the cash for your studies and meet language requirements, you got pushed to the front of the line.
Sounds efficient in theory.
In theory. But that upfront guarantee became a massive vulnerability for forged documents.
Oh, I see.
The audit revealed that out of those 800 confirmed fraud cases we just talked about, an astonishing 68%, that is 541 cases, originated from the SDS program.
68%. If a single program is generating almost 70% of your confirmed fraud, the mechanism is fundamentally broken.
IRCC knew it was broken. Internal documents show they recognized the integrity risks as early as 2022.
Wow.
To give you some context on how skewed the program became, Indian nationals recently made up 96% of all SDS approvals.
96%.
Yeah. And in 2024, the SDS approval rate for applicants from India hit an unprecedented 98%.
98% approval. Almost nobody was getting rejected.
Exactly. And this happened despite internal government risk matrices classifying India as a high-risk country for document fraud.
So they just ignored their own warnings.
The fast-track mechanism essentially bypassed the necessary scrutiny. Ultimately, the vulnerabilities were so deeply embedded that IRCC just gave up trying to patch it. They completely canceled the SDS program in November 2024.
And pulling the plug on the SDS caused an absolute demographic earthquake. I mean, the makeup of who is coming to study in Canada has shifted dramatically almost overnight.
It really has.
In 2023, international students from India accounted for 51.6% of all new incoming study permits. Fast forward to 2025, after the program was cut, that number plummeted to just 8.1%.
What's fascinating here is that it is one of the fastest, most radical demographic shifts in Canadian immigration history.
Yeah.
And, nature abhors a vacuum.
Right.
As the volume of Indian students dropped, students from other regions have risen proportionally. Europe went from 3% to over 21%.
That's a huge jump.
We're also seeing significant rises from the Indo-Pacific, China, the Americas, and Africa.
Here's where it gets really fascinating. The government essentially diversified Canadian universities not by forcing a quota, but simply by closing a single policy loophole.
That is an incredibly important legal distinction. The diversification is happening organically as a byproduct of enforcement.
Because they can't just set quotas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
IRCC has explicitly stated they will track these new regional volumes, but they will absolutely not impose country-specific quotas. In fact, the Immigration Act forbids them from setting targets based on nationality.
Right.
The system legally has to remain country agnostic.
But let me ask you this on behalf of our listener. What if you are listening right now and you are currently holding a study permit that you originally got through the SDS program before it was shut down? What happens to you when you need to extend your visa?
That is a great question, and it brings us to another new measure, which is enhanced SDS scrutiny.
Okay, so they're looking closer at extensions now.
Very much so. If you were admitted under the canceled SDS program, you need to understand that your extension is not going to be the breeze it used to be. In November 2025, IRCC launched a new aggressive analytics model specifically designed to triage these extensions.
So an algorithm is flagging files now.
Yes. When you apply to extend an old SDS visa, your file is subjected to enhanced risk reviews based on historical fraud patterns.
That sounds intense.
Now, if you are a genuine student with proper documentation, you will
Yeah.
be fine. But the era of the rubber-stamped extension is over.
Right.
You need to expect processing delays, and you must be prepared to provide rigorous, undeniable proof of your ongoing academic enrollment and your financial standing.
Okay, so the government is clearly cracking down on fraud at the individual micro level, but they are also fighting a massive battle on the macro level.
Yes, the sheer volume.
Exactly. They want to drastically shrink the total volume of temporary residents in the country, and the way they rolled out that reduction plan was absolute chaos for the provinces.
The macro goal is highly ambitious.
Yeah.
Minister Diab announced that the objective is to reduce the temporary resident share of the Canadian population to under 5% by the end of 2027.
Under 5%. That's a big drop.
And structurally, it is beginning to work. By the fourth quarter of 2025, we saw a drop of 171,296 temporary residents.
Wow.
But achieving that drop required taking a hatchet to the number of study permits issued.
The 2024 plunge was brutal. Just look at the gap between what the government thought they were going to do and what actually happened.
It was a massive miscalculation.
In 2024, IRCC forecast they would approve around 348,900 study permits, but the actual number they approved was only 149,559.
Less than half.
Less than half. Overall approval rates went into a free fall, dropping from 58% in 2023 to just 38% by September 2025.
But the real chaos was how that massive reduction was distributed. It brings us to the provincial allocation mess.
Oh, this part is just ridiculous.
The government needed to cap the total number of students, so they gave each province a specific allocation. But the formula they used was based strictly on population size.
Right.
Ontario has a huge population, so they got a huge allocation. Prince Edward Island is tiny, so they got a tiny allocation.
Which completely ignores the reality of how these local education systems actually function, because smaller provinces historically have much lower visa approval rates for the students applying to their schools.
Precisely. Let's explain the mechanism of why this failed. If you give a small province a hard cap of 1,000 applications, but their historical approval rate is only 30%, they're only going to get 300 actual students.
You've just starved their local colleges.
Exactly. Look at the actual outcomes from 2024. Ontario was supposed to see a 41% drop, but they plummeted by 75%.
Ouch.
And Alberta actually expected a 10% increase in their student population under the new formula, but instead their numbers crashed by 65%. Every single province performed worse than intended.
It was a complete disaster for regional colleges that rely on those tuition dollars to keep the lights on. So what is the new measure to fix this?
The fix is a revised provincial allocation model. IRCC realized that pure population math just doesn't work.
Finally.
Going forward, they will allocate spots based on recent regional visa approval rates. The goal is to ensure smaller provinces actually receive the physical number of successful students they need to sustain their local institutions while still maintaining the strict national cap.
Okay, we have covered a lot of heavy, high-level policy, but I want to bring this right down to the ground level for you, the listener.
Let's do that.
With plummeting approval rates, zero tolerance fraud tracking, and algorithm-based scrutiny, what do these changes actually mean for your daily life? How do you protect yourself and your status in this incredibly strict new era?
Let's actually start with a piece of really good news.
We could use some.
Amidst all these systemic failures, IRCC implemented one mechanism that is working brilliantly. In late 2023, they launched the letter verification system.
Right, the LVS.
This system requires schools to directly verify a student's acceptance letter with the government before the visa is processed. Out of 841,000 letters checked, 97% were processed successfully.
That's great.
And it proved that 94.1% of the letters were entirely genuine.
That is a relief. If you are a legitimate student with a real acceptance letter, the system is now highly efficient at proving your legitimacy instantly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it also places a massive new burden on you, because now the pressure is on you to ensure your chosen school is actively playing by the rules.
Right, because if the school fails their compliance reports, the student suffers. And IRCC doesn't make it easy to figure out who is failing, do they?
They don't. And this is vital for you to understand. A compliance report is essentially a school proving to the government that their international students are actually enrolled and actively attending classes.
Okay.
The audit noted that in the spring of 2025, about 50 schools failed to submit these required compliance reports.
And how many students did that impact?
Roughly 10,000 students?
10,000.
Yeah. If your school fails to report, they risk suspension from the program. IRCC will freeze permit processing for that institution, putting your entire academic future in jeopardy.
And they don't even tell you who is failing.
Because the government does not publish a public list of the failing schools, your best and only defense is vigilance. You must constantly monitor the official Designated Learning Institution, or DLI, list on the government portal.
You have to watch it like a hawk.
If your school's DLI status gets revoked or suspended, you need to know the very second it happens.
And here's where it gets really interesting and honestly incredibly tragic. We mentioned fake travel agents right at the start of the deep dive.
Yeah.
We know there are people paying these unlicensed predatory migration agents top dollar, thinking they are buying peace of mind and securing their future in Canada.
It is a predatory industry that thrives on exploiting complex rules.
Exactly. But here is the brutal reality. If that agent decides to cut corners, if they submit a forged financial document or a fake acceptance letter on your behalf to guarantee the visa, they are actually selling you a one-way ticket to a 5-year ban from Canada.
I cannot overstate the severity of this. Under Canadian immigration law, misrepresentation is not just a slap on the wrist.
No, it is not.
It carries a mandatory 5-year ban and immediate removal from the country. And remember, the new mandatory fraud follow-up and the post-approval CBSA alerts we discussed.
The automated ones.
The mechanism for catching this fraud is now automated and inescapable. The chances of getting caught are higher than they have ever been in Canadian history.
And the most important part, you cannot stand in front of an immigration officer, point the finger at your agent and say, I didn't know they faked the documents.
That's fair.
Your signature is on that final application. The legal responsibility falls entirely 100% on your shoulders. So what is the practical advice for our listener to protect themselves?
You have to take extreme ownership of your paperwork. If you even suspect that your agent used fraudulent documents, for instance, if they refused to let you see the final application before it was submitted.
Red flag.
Huge red flag. Or if they promised to provide a financial guarantee document that seems completely too good to be true, do not wait.
Right.
Do not wait for IRCC to find out. Do not wait for an unerasable alert to be placed on your file. You need to seek professional legal advice from a certified, reputable Canadian immigration lawyer immediately.
Before it's too late.
You have to get ahead of the problem before the algorithm catches it.
Absolutely. Do not outsource your future to someone who doesn't have to face the consequences.
If we synthesize everything we've unpacked today, from the 23,500 missing students to the dramatic demographic shifts to the provincial allocation caps, the overarching theme is undeniable.
That's a whole new world.
The era of rubber stamping study permits is officially dead. The Canadian immigration system has fundamentally shifted its entire philosophy.
Right.
It used to prioritize high volume and rapid processing to feed tuition dollars into the education sector. Today, it is a system entirely obsessed with strict verification, rigid compliance, and automated enforcement.
And that fundamental shift leaves us with a really provocative final thought to send you off with. With Canada actively shrinking its temporary resident population and subjecting international students to completely unprecedented levels of scrutiny, tracking their exits, running algorithms on their extensions, and hunting down old fraud, are we about to witness a massive global brain drain away from Canada?
That's a real possibility.
Think about it. If you are a genuine, highly skilled student looking at the global map and you feel the Canadian process has just become too hostile, too uncertain, or too risky, do you even bother applying?
Many might not.
Or do you take your talents, your tuition dollars, and your future innovations to countries like the UK or Australia? These new measures might successfully patch the holes and fix the fraud, but they also might completely reshape the global education economy in ways the Canadian government hasn't fully anticipated.
That is a profound question. We are watching a live experiment in immigration policy, and we will be tracking the economic consequences of this for years to come.
Something for you to mull over as you go about your week. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you, everyone.
Remember, if you found this breakdown valuable, please subscribe to the podcast, hit the like button, and drop a comment letting us know exactly what immigration topics you want us to tackle next.
We read them all.
Your feedback is what drives this show. Stay informed, stay curious, take control of your paperwork, and we will catch you on the next one.